In a nation where every able-bodied man serves in the military, there exists a story so chilling that it has become deeply woven into the fabric of Singapore's military folklore. Not because it's written in history books or taught in schools, but because it's whispered in the dead of night during guard duty, shared in hushed tones in military bunks, and passed down from one generation of soldiers to the next. This is the story of the third door bunk, about a recruit Thumb whose mysterious and gruesome death shook an entire military company to its core. A death so horrifying that it birthed one of Singapore's most enduring ghost stories, leaving an indelible mark on a generation of conscripts. But this isn't just an urban legend. The events that transpired were so unsettling that the military was allegedly forced to make a bizarre architectural change to the barracks themselves, a change that only added credibility to the tale. The year was 1983. Pulau Tekong, a military training island off the eastern coast of Singapore, was shrouded in its usual blanket of tropical humidity. The island, known for its dense jungle and unforgiving terrain, had always been the crucible where the saying goes, boys were forged into men. But on this particular night, something was different. The air was heavier, the darkness deeper, and the jungle seemed to pulse with an ancient, malevolent energy. The recruits of Charlie Company were on their 16-kilometer route march, a standard training exercise that every recruit must complete. The night was moonless, with only the dim glow of red flashlights cutting through the darkness as the platoon navigated the treacherous terrain, trudging through the dense jungle, weighed down by their heavy field packs. Spirits were high at first. It was just another training exercise after all. But as the hours dragged on, fatigue began to set in. Recruit Thumb, a quiet 18-year-old who had only recently enlisted, was part of the company that night. He wasn't particularly fit, but he wasn't struggling either. He kept to the middle of the group, pacing himself as they followed their sergeant's instructions. The march took the recruits deeper into the jungle, a place where the dense canopy blotted out the moonlight and the familiar sounds of civilization gave way to the eerie symphony of nocturnal creatures. The recruits walked in single file, their boots crunching against the dirt path, when one of them noticed something odd. "Sergeant," the recruit called out, his voice tinged with concern. "Someone's missing." The sergeant brought the group to an abrupt halt. A quick head count confirmed their fears. Recruit Thumb was nowhere to be found. "Thumb!" the sergeant bellowed, his voice echoing through the jungle. "Where the hell are you?" The recruits joined in, shouting Thumb's name into the darkness. Flashlights flickered as they scanned the surrounding area, but there was no sign of him. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. The search for Recruit Thumb stretched into the early hours of the morning. Exhausted and frustrated, the sergeant finally called for backup. By dawn, a full-scale search party had been deployed, scouring every inch of the jungle. It wasn't until 3 days later that they found him. His body was discovered in a clearing, surrounded by dense undergrowth, far from where the company had been marching. What they saw was so grotesque that several of the soldiers who found him had to look away. His body was positioned with an unnatural precision, arms straight by his sides, legs together as if carefully arranged for a funeral. But it was what lay beside him that turned hardened soldiers pale with horror. His internal organs had been removed and laid out in a neat row beside his body. Each organ appeared surgically extracted, pristine and undamaged, as if removed by an expert hand. There were no signs of a struggle, no claw marks, no bite wounds, nothing to indicate that a wild animal had attacked him, nothing that could explain the grotesque tableau. It was as if something or someone had done this deliberately. The sergeant was called to the scene, and when he saw the body, his face turned pale. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. This isn't normal." The body was quickly removed, and the recruits were ordered not to speak of what they had seen. But you can't hide something like this on an island as small as Pulau Tekong. Word spread quickly among the company. Rumors began to swirl, and fear took hold of the men. Charlie Company was granted a temporary break in training, but the recruits knew something wasn't right. The barracks, once a place of camaraderie and laughter, now felt off. The air was thick, and an unshakable sense of unease settled over the recruits. Then the incidents began. Strange occurrences started plaguing Charlie Company. Soldiers reported seeing a figure in full battle order, standing at attention during midnight head counts, only to vanish when approached. Others spoke of hearing commands echoing from empty parade squares, the voice unmistakably Thumb's. At first, they brushed it off as sleep deprivation or their imagination playing tricks on them, but the whispers grew louder, more distinct. Soon, more and more of them reported hearing the same thing. One night, a recruit woke up screaming. When the others rushed to his bed, he was shaking uncontrollably. "It was Thumb," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I saw him. He was standing at the foot of my bed. He was just staring at me." The stories didn't stop there. Recruits began seeing shadows moving across the walls, even when no one was nearby. Others reported hearing footsteps echoing through the hallways at night, only to find the corridors empty. The most chilling incident came from a recruit who had gone to the bathroom alone late at night. As he washed his hands, he glanced up at the mirror and froze. Standing behind him was Recruit Thumb, his face pale and lifeless, his uniform soaked with blood. The recruit turned around, but there was no one there. The old-timers whispered about the island's dark history, about how the Japanese had used it for executions during World War II, and how the soil was soaked with the blood of countless victims. Others pointed out that the original inhabitants of the island, the Malays, had their ancestral cemetery removed for the construction of the military barracks. Possibly this angered the spirits of those departed souls. Word spread quickly, and soon no one in Charlie Company could sleep. The barracks became a place of fear, a prison of restless nights and mounting paranoia. After weeks of escalating paranormal incidents, the higher-ups finally had to intervene. The recruits were on edge, and their performance in training was beginning to suffer. Desperate for a solution, the higher-ups decided to bring in a Taoist priest. The priest walked through the barracks, chanting softly as he examined the building. When he reached the bunk where Recruit Thumb had stayed, he stopped abruptly. Turning to the officers, he said, "There's something here, something that doesn't belong, a spirit that cannot leave." He explained that the spirit of Recruit Thumb was trapped, unable to leave the barracks. According to him, the layout of Charlie Company's bunk was to blame. The design had inadvertently created a space where spirits could become stuck. The solution, he said, was simple: a third door. Construction began immediately. A new door was added to the Charlie Company's bunk, seemingly without purpose. It didn't lead anywhere. It was just there, an anomaly in the otherwise uniform barracks, where all military bunks had two doors, one at each end. After the door was completed, the hauntings reportedly ceased. The whispers stopped, the shadows disappeared, and Recruit Thumb was never seen again. Today, the story of Recruit Thumb lives on as part of Singapore's military national service folklore. It's a tale that every recruit eventually hears, whether they want to or not, and often told with nervous laughter and a hint of bravado. What makes this tale so chilling is the lack of answers or any effort to investigate the truth. No official explanation was ever given for Recruit Thumb's death, although the local newspaper did report a death occurring during a route march in 1983. Yet for those who have trained there, the story is more than just an urban legend. They have seen with their own eyes the only building in the barracks that has three doors, and one of those doors had a rusty padlock permanently attached to it. They also recall the military directive that forbade any military training on Thursday nights, the night Recruit Thumb died. So if you ever find yourself on Pulau Tekong, remember this story. And if you ever see a shadow moving where it shouldn't, or hear whispers in the dead of night, don't look back, because it might just be Recruit Thumb still searching for a way out.